Welcome, everyone, to this episode of Collider Movie Talk. I am sitting in for the lovely Perry Namiroff, who is off handling other business today. But don't go away. We got a lot to talk about here. We're talking about the Disney Plus TV shows coming out of Comic-Con, and we're also talking about this Matt Damon Ben Affleck story. And I am going to be joined today by two wonderfully funny panelists and knowledgeable panelists who can't stop talking about comic book stuff, superhero stuff, and then we'll see what they know of Ben Affleck and Matt Damon. Let's meet it now. Jesus. That's Greg Alba from The Real Rejects. How are you, Greg?
I love Marvel.
Well said. Well said. No one shills like Greg shills.
No one shills. I'm all pure shill today, people.
1997's the Fox ambassador, Greg Alba here.
I love, and then of course we have Coy Jandreau here from The Heroes Set. How are you, Coy?
Doing good, excited. I mean, the slate today is insane.
Right?
Comic-Con was absolutely mind-blowing. And then my hometown boys, Affleck and Damon.
Yeah.
Perfect show.
We're going to get to them real soon.
Coy has shin splints.
I walked so much, I have shin splints.
Yeah.
Comic-Con broke
Coy
me.
has shill splints.
I definitely do. I definitely shill.
Well, speaking of shills, let's move on to this. And this is the first story today. That's from Disney Plus. Hall H exploded on Saturday night. Marvel doing their presentation for Phase 4. I was at a wedding in Portland, but I could hear it all the way in Oregon. A lot of nerdgasms going on with the announcements of Phase 4 and Phase 5. Look, Blade blew me away, that announcement, so I'm excited about that. But looking at these shows, we want to focus on these Disney Plus shows, and we want to look at how they might impact the MCU overall as it goes forward into Phase 4 and Phase 5. You know, Kevin Feige has made it very clear that the TV shows now in Phase 4 will definitely affect the larger MCU. And we're looking at the TV shows Falcon and the Winter Soldier, which comes out in autumn 2020, WandaVision in spring of 2021, Loki in spring of 2021 as well. Hawkeye comes out in autumn of 2021. And by the way, those of you complaining about Hawkeye's font, you obviously did not read the Matt Fraction book, which is what that font is based on.
Yeah.
And also the animated What If series that's coming out in summer of 2021. That's more of a lesser impact on the overall MCU, but those first four shows certainly will be impacting the MCU overall. Coy Jandreau, you as one of the co-hosts of Heroes, you look at this, you were there. What is the show that really stands out for you that you think is going to affect the MCU more?
I think overall, the timing of Hawkeye is really a testament to, I think Hawkeye might lead into Young Avengers.
Okay.
It is a book that has Kate Bishop in it. It is a book based off the Matt Fraction run. It is a book that is featuring Ronin. I think what happens in that show is that Ronin / Jeremy Renner / Hawkeye has to atone for what he's done and then passes the mantle on to Kate Bishop.
Yeah.
I think we're going to have a great like Lethal Weapon flavor with the young cop, old cop. I think we're going to have a lot of like fun buddy cop banter between the two of them, but it ends with him being like, I've got some red in my ledger I can't wipe off. I've got to retire as being Hawkeye. You're Hawkeye now. And I think that leads into Young Avengers. I think there's the reason it's one of the last ones on the slate. I think that ties into the greater MCU in a really big way. And we know how good Matt Fraction's run. And the animatics of this, it was only like 10 seconds, but they zoomed through like this beautiful symmetry in yellow. And then we saw Kate Bishop as she is in the comics and the drawings and everything. It felt just like Matt Fraction's comic, which I think will lead beautifully to the future of the MCU. And then he said Phase 5's Avengers team is very different than anything we've had before. And it has some old characters, some new characters. I think it might be Young Avengers.
And I think it'll be fascinating too, because you have a Hawkeye now in the Matt Fraction run. He doesn't have a wife and kids,
right?
And so this will be fascinating to see how they weave that in. And of course, they've done that really well throughout the MCU over the last 10, 11 years with their films, weaving in some of the comic book stuff into their own story. So I'm excited to see what they're able to do with that. If Kate Bishop ends up being a huge part of this, that excites me even more.
And one more theory.
Yeah.
WandaVision.
Oh, yeah.
WandaVision, I think, is going to reflect House of M. I think in a very different way than people think. I don't think the mutant way, but I think the events of House of M change the Marvel Universe. I don't think mutants come through WandaVision, which I think is going to be based off Tom King's Vision run, which if you haven't read, it's life-changing. It's this dystopian feel of 50s. It's not set in the 50s, but it feels like that Americana flavor.
Okay.
I think in this case, it'll have Scarlet Witch, and I think she will go mad, and something will happen at the end of WandaVision where she says something or does something that causes a rift in the multiverse, leading to the madness in the multiverse with Doctor Strange. We know that Scarlet Witch is in Doctor Strange. Right. We know these movies tie together. What better way to get people from the TV to the movies and back and forth than have Wanda do something so big it takes multiple episodes, takes multiple hours, that leads into the madness of the multiverse.
Yep, that's I love that theory. I hope it does come true. That certainly opens up a lot of avenues, and it's better than just one person from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. showing up in a Captain America movie. Nothing against Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Recently departed Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. R.I.P. You look at this situation, Greg. What's the TV show that stands out for you that you think might tie into the
I mean, I feel like the one that they're leading with, the first one, Falcon Winter Soldier.
Okay.
That's the one that has me the most intrigued. I was a little bit bummed because when you watch Endgame and then you see that Falcon inherits the shield, I was thinking, oh man, it's going to be crazy to get his movie. Then I remembered, oh yeah, they're doing the show. But what's exciting me about this whole process, I think they didn't ever include, you guys would know better than I would, whenever they announced the phases, they never included like the Netflix Marvel shows,
of course not,
right?
because they didn't think they were connected.
They never included that. So
not
it's
overtly, right.
It's fascinating.
The incident on Netflix.
Yeah. It's interesting to see what they're doing here with like, oh wow, the half of what was on that lineup are the TV shows. I'm curious to see if people will truly follow it though. There's a lot of us hardcore fans who are obviously going to go check it out. But you know, I'm also thinking about the idea of when you marathon these things. Will Disney Plus have kind of a playlist of watch it in this order? Since they're going to have all the Marvel shows, like that excites me. But what about when they marathon the movies at movie theaters? Will they have the shows included as well?
Oh, you're going way out there.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Yeah.
I'm thinking though, would you have to do that? And these shows have to be great though, because you know it's like we can marathon the MCU films, and we could like a lot of people don't like Thor: The Dark World, but you could be like, oh, it's just one movie, let's just watch it.
Right.
But with a whole show, you're gonna have to really make a commitment. If you're not enjoying like the first 2 episodes, well, crap, we got like 7-8 more hours left of this to keep going.
Well, this is a great point you bring up, Greg.
I wanted to bring something different to the table.
Oh yeah, of course.
You know, because I'm like, let Coy have the theories. What are no one else bringing up?
That's fair.
And this is what I'm going to bring up today. Marathon sessions, people.
That's how you stand out in this business. You do something new. The Real Rejects certainly do that. You look at this situation here with this, though, Greg, you bring up a great point. This is almost like a soft reset of the universe. You could absolutely walk into the MCU now without having seen any of the MCU films and get caught up quickly. And then with all these new characters, all these things, you would only have to have someone sitting next to you going, okay, that's connected to that in this way, boom. And you keep going. So that is certainly possible. So the marathons may have to wait for a bit, but then when they do come, you might be right. They're in essence pseudo Hall H sessions every day.
Yeah.
12 hours in one room.
And people are also talking about, Blade, is that going to be rated R? When they finally have Deadpool, will that be rated R? I'm thinking like Falcon Winter Soldier, and even Hawkeye especially. These characters are, Falcon Winter, they don't have superpowers, right? Falcon and Winter Soldier? Do they?
Winter Soldier does.
Winter Soldier kind of does,
Yeah,
right?
because
But
Captain
still,
America
like a
was
lot
sort
of,
of-
even when you watch like that Captain America, the Winter Soldier.
But comparatively now.
No, right? But having the kind of villains they go up against, I feel like those could lend itself to sort of a hard R type of TV show. And I wonder if Disney Plus isn't willing to do that. I love the way you listen, Coy.
Yeah, well, you've got
the most engaging listener. You're just like, wow. I'm not thinking about the next thing I'm going to say. I'm just going to listen to you.
You've got Daniel Bruhl coming back as Baron Zemo. You got Emily Van Camp coming back as Sharon Carter, Peggy Carter's great niece.
With the Hawkeye show, they said they were possibly wanting to explore some of the Ronin elements when the snapping was happening. So I'm thinking there you could actually go a little bit hard R. I like that the Netflix shows did that, other than like actual nudity, but they still went pretty violent, and I think they can get away with that, especially with Falcon Winter Soldier and Hawkeye.
Well, I agree with everything you guys are saying. I'm excited to see, and those shows seem to be the ones that could stand out in this way because they're both tied into the original first 3 phases of the MCU. But you look at Loki, who's also been tied in. I think Loki should get a little bit of love as well. I think this is going to be fascinating to see what he does with that Tesseract. There's nothing that pissed Dennis Zen off more than the idea that Loki was going to come back to life in some form, in some way. And I was like, there's no way they're killing him off. He is too interesting. And look, they brought everybody back in new and unique ways, right? And so that's going to be fun to see what he does with that Tesseract. And he could easily pop up in other TV shows with that Tesseract and actually become like the old school 70s superhero TV shows where you'd have like Captain America show up on the Hulk or Spider-Man show up on the Fantastic Four, those kinds of things. You had those possibilities when you were watching those old 70s TV shows. Will they have a little bit of influence on here and also tie into the larger
I think so.
universe?
It's Loki. He's the trickster.
Yeah, he is.
I think
The god of mischief.
I think this one will be the most fun. The idea. It seems weirdly to be the most inconsequential for some reason to me.
Right.
Probably because of the fact that it is like that Loki that picked up from Endgame, and I know some people have been a little bit bummed of like, oh, what about all that character arc? Well, now we're just going to get a whole different kind of character arc here with Loki. But I like the idea of what you're saying of him hopping around the shows or hopping around timelines, because he can do that.
He can.
I feel like that one will definitely be the most fun. And I don't know why it reads as the most inconsequential, which to me means it'll probably be one of the most consequential ones.
Right.
I also think it's going to be interesting because we get an Endgame Endgame era, Avengers 1 era Loki, which means he doesn't have any of the maturation
Exactly.
into, like, we're getting a Loki when he's full god of mischief. He doesn't have any, like, he doesn't care. He's not as compassionate as he grows. So I'm excited to see Tom Hiddleston's regression. I'm excited to see him play 2006 or 8 or whatever's Loki. That's going to be really fun to have that flavor. Plus the idea of like Forrest Gump with Loki. I think he's going to be like running through time and having hijinks. So I think it's going to be a really fun show. It's just, I think it's going to be less tied directly into ramifications of the films, as you were saying. And then What If is completely the wild card, but Jeffrey Wright as the Watcher, like hearing his voice come out and knowing that's what the Watcher's going to be. Every one of these shows definitely has full spectrum potential for everything we want out of them.
Yeah, I just want him to have the accent from Shaft. That would be great if Jeffrey Wright showed up as the Watcher with that accent. What you doing with that Tesseract, man? I'd like to see that. So anyway, we'll see what happens. Disney Plus looks, it's exciting. Kevin Feige certainly, as you guys mentioned, he did not always talk about the Netflix TV shows in conjunction with the MCU. Certainly doing that now. His quote here real quick, if I can read it before we have to jump ahead. It is incredibly liberating. It's an amazing opportunity we have. He told this to Screen Rant. Disney Plus has sent a wave of creativity through Marvel Studios in a really great way. It's going to focus on events you think you know everything about from the MCU. When you change one thing here or there, how everything is different. And certainly they needed to shake things up to go into a new phase.
I mean, one really quick thing I wanted to add before we move on. We were talking about the Netflix shows because it seemed like for us as viewers at the time before we knew they were canceled is that they tie into the movies in some way. And we were hoping that, okay, maybe after a couple of years, we'll get them back. I really feel like it just seems like we're not going to get them back, those versions. And Kevin Feige even said with Steve Weintraub that, the whole Cottonmouth thing, because now that we have Mahershala Ali as Blade, I'm like, no, Cottonmouth isn't going to.
They sold the clothes.
There
have been auctions.
That's true.
You can buy Daredevil suit. That means it's over. Like when there's an auction, you don't put back in the house.
It's done.
I had some hopes that Matt Murdock, Charlie Cox would return, but I'm like, none of this is going to happen.
I love the dream because I love them, but their clothes are gone.
We got to move on. One quick question for you guys, real quick. It's John Ashford in the chat. With Blade coming back, what other Marvel horror character will come to the MCU? Man-Thing?
Moon Knight.
Moon Knight. I love Moon Knight.
Everyone's been wanting Moon Knight for a long time.
Years. Yeah.
And that's what like Marcus and McFeely want. That's what everyone wants. I think if we're going to get Marcus and McFeely back, it's going to be through Moon Knight. And I think if we're going to play, I think the supernatural element of Doctor Strange is going to allow for Blade. I think we could even get a Blade post-credit scene in Doctor Strange tying us into Phase 5.
Nice. I just wanted a character.
Give
me something.
New Mutants.
New Mutants?
New Mutants is happening.
Boom. Look at that.
Watch, guys. It's going to happen.
I can see Dorian.
It will be released.
I can see Dorian being in the New Mutants. New Mutants. Let's put it up. All right. Next up on the show, we're talking about Matt Damon and Ben Affleck coming together in a Ridley Scott film. But before we get to that, we want to get those live chat questions. So send those in. And also, we have some plugs to do. And the first plug here is from Jandreau's co-host on Heroes, Amy. Let's see that now.
Hi, I'm Amy Dallin, one of the hosts of Collider Heroes, and starting right now, you can catch our show at a new time and format. We're coming at you Tuesday nights with a new shorter Collider Heroes and a longer Collider Heroes podcast, where Coy and I are going to talk your ears off. You already know that's coming. So make sure to go to YouTube, subscribe, and find us on the Collider Heroes podcast feed for all of that sweaty goodness.
I love the lovely Amy Dallin. She's so much fun, so much joy. Also, the other thing we want to tell you about is that Once Upon a Time in Hollywood was screened for press last night, and some people went to the premiere. Jeff Snyder and I, for God's sakes, we're going to get together and do a non-spoiler review. We're going to drop that later on today, so look for that. All right, let's move on to our second story, and that is Boston boys here. Matt Damon and Ben Affleck. You can't account for taste. They're Red Sox fans. They are writing and starring in a new film from Ridley Scott called The Last Duel. They've teamed up with Nicole Holofcener, I hope I'm saying that right, to write a new script. It is called The Last Duel. It's their first joint effort since they won the Oscar for Good Will Hunting. And hey, if you're going to come back together, what better director to get than Ridley Scott? It's a revenge story that follows two best friends, I imagine Damon and Affleck, and when one goes to war, the other rapes his wife. The soldier learns of this upon his return, but no one will believe his wife, so he's left with one recourse. He appeals to the King of France and challenges his former friend to a duel to the death. This seems like a drama, though it sounds a little bit like a comedy. It's based on a true story about the last legally sanctioned duel in France. I'm getting Barry Lyndon vibes from this. So we'll see. Greg Alba, you hear this? Is this the way you wanted them to come back in a period piece set in France?
It sounds really funny, like you said.
Yeah.
Coy told me it takes place in the late 90s.
1890s? Like 1790s?
1390s?
It's like 1300s, this
Yeah.
one. I'm cautiously optimistic about this one.
Yeah.
I feel like Ridley Scott is often a name that people get very excited about, but truthfully, I find him to be a little bit hit or miss. He sometimes makes like great films.
Mm-hmm.
He's not one of the directors who's just like went downhill,
No.
But sometimes he makes great films, and sometimes it's like it's kind of whatever. Sometimes he gets two actors like Christian Bale and Joel Edgerton for that Moses movie. I'm like, oh, that sounds cool. Oh, never mind. And that was a period piece movie.
Yes, it was.
But I think the idea of Ben Affleck and Matt Damon coming together for this specific project, when I first heard like the headline, I'm like, oh, sweet, a cool drama from them. And then I read this, I'm like, oh wow, that sounds intense. How do you make a trailer that really communicates this movie? I'm hoping, my main hope is that Matt Damon is the bad guy. I feel like for this, it's easy to imagine Ben Affleck taking on that role. But we were talking before filming, I think Matt Damon can play some great bad guys. Talented Mr. Ripley.
Certainly.
The Departed, for example. But this is like pure, this is like vicious, to betray your best friend to that degree. John Humphrey and I have been in this situation too many times.
Whoa.
So yeah, I think that this movie, that's right. That's the kind of comedy you get at the Real Rejects today,
Yikes.
people. Walk on over to that channel, subscribe, click that notification bell.
All right. Yeah, well, Coy, picking up from that
transition us,
Following
Coy.
Greg, I love Ben Affleck and Matt Damon. I have a strong bias because they grew up like 20 minutes from me, so there's an inherent bias for these Boston boys. But I do, in fact, like them apples, and therefore, anytime they team up, I am always down. I loved the moment in the Jay and Silent Bob rebooted when we got to see them together on screen again.
Yep.
That's always going to be exciting.
Snoochie Boochies.
Good Will Hunting 2 hunting season, one of the best movies of all time.
Yes.
Doesn't exist, but I love it. But for me, and I don't know how to say this in any other way, I didn't watch Game of Thrones because I don't like stories around rape. I know that rape is a part of life. I know that is something that happens, and I know that
be, but it is.
So survivors need their stories told, but I hope they handle it more delicately than making it a sensationalized concept, because I struggle watching it. I struggle having it be a plot point. I struggle knowing that people go through it, and it's a really hard thing for me to rationalize for a plot point. And I get that this is the last duel, and I love that side of the concept. So I hope I can appreciate everything else around that, and I hope they tell it delicately enough that it's about them and not sensationalizing that point, because I don't want to be upset at Matt Damon or Ben Affleck, whoever ends up playing the villain, for doing too well at their job. Like, I don't want them to sell me on that and then be like, well, I hate that guy.
Well, my question is too, is like, you're talking about the sensationalized part. I'm wondering like what will be the kind of tone of this movie. I feel like when it's easy to think of like the late Ben Affleck, Matt Damon, is it going to be like some cool thriller type of movie, or is it going to be a kind of a psychological drama that you dive into that builds up to this last duel? Because I could see it going either way. I feel like you can actually get away with this movie without even showing that scene.
That'd be my preference.
Honestly, I can't sit through those kind of scenes.
That's what I struggle with.
One of the
sure.
So I have friends who can't sit through animal deaths. Me, I can't sit through those kind of scenes.
Yeah.
It's very difficult for me to sit through that. So
it could be a terribly dark comedy of manners, like we saw in The Fountain.
wait, you're being serious about the comedy part.
I think there's
I have a hard time seeing
possibility here.
Like Jojo Rabbit, like Hitler jokes?
Yeah, that kind of stuff. Right. And it seems to be an exploration that is happening about going into these period pieces and exploring this way. Now, I'm sure it's going to be a drama and it'll do itself. But what is fascinating to me is it could have ramifications that echo into 2019 with a lot of the Me Too movement and the Time's Up movement and these stories coming out about people committing sexual assault or numerous sexual assaults. It could have echoes. And so if they're going to approach it in a dramatic way, in that way, so it feels topical, even though it's set during that time in France, then I think there is something really incredible and deep to explore here and complex that you can explore here, even though it's set in a different time.
I just hope that people that have gone through atrocities like that don't feel like it's sensationalizing their experience. And I hope that people watching it don't feel like attacked or it's one of the most despicable things that humans are capable of. So anytime I read that in a log line, I'm like, I'm out.
I mean, what I don't want it to be is woman is assaulted and badass male dude comes to save the
know what I
day.
mean? And that's
like,
kinda my
that's what
concern.
I'm
That's
sick of. Well, honestly, that's the plot point I'm sick of. So I'm like, all right.
But the
I
dual
hope this woman's a
aspect-
character, you know?
Right, the dual aspect looks fun. But yeah, I
Yeah.
hear what you're saying. You're absolutely right on that end. And that's why Atomic Blonde was such a badass movie. Yeah. She don't need nobody helping her.
There's potential. I love the team. I think Ridley Scott is also more hit than miss, but more miss lately.
Sure.
Like there are misses. And then I love these two, so I have a lot of potential. All the math is there. I just hope that aspect is handled correctly.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see here. Okay. So we'll see what happens with that movie. More details will come out. There's certainly, it's certainly quite a powerhouse team coming together for this. So we'll see what the progression, and if it ends up being a kind of really dark.
I wonder how much they'll be actually writing in the.
Yeah. Well, hey, don't start that. Don't start that. They won that Oscar.
Yeah. Well, they actually be writing a lot for this. I wonder.
They wrote it. We'll see. Well, I got to do one last plug here, and that's for Frosty, our own Frosty. That's Steve Weintraub here at Collider. He did an exclusive 30-minute interview from Comic-Con with Todd McFarlane and Rob Liefeld, two fans of Heroes. Their first joint appearance in longer than they can remember. It is now up on Collider.com, so when the movie talk is over, you can go and watch that interview and enjoy some time with Todd McFarlane and Rob Liefeld, who I love to pieces. All right, let's get to the chat. You guys want to have some answers? All right. Let's see here. Who's this from? Dorian. Will Rocha own up to being wrong about the Endgame box office? No, because I wasn't wrong. Yeah, it won, but it won by doing the re-releases. This was set. Avatar's record was set on its own. In the initial run, it defeated the current champion. Endgame did not. Endgame needed re-releases to defeat the current champion. That's my thought. So, anything? All right, we're moving on.
I'm happy for Endgame.
I think Avatar had a re-release. I think that eventually Endgame will have a re-release. I think that
it already did have a re-release.
But no, but I'm saying like a few years in.
Okay.
But I also think that it's all Disney making billions.
Yeah, Disney beating Disney to be Disney.
At the end of the day, it's just everyone going like this with money, and I get none of it.
I'm so happy
good for them.
So happy for Disney. I'm so happy.
Chill away.
Yeah,
Chill away.
man.
All right, Kristen D'Onofrio. We'll run through these real quick. Kristen D'Onofrio. Choose Kill Bill Volume 3 or Tarantino's Star Trek. What should be his last film?
Volume 3.
Star Trek.
Ooh.
Kill Bill is a kind of the exact example of how that storyline's done wrong that we were just worried about. Like I was really like the hospital scene and all those things. I just felt like
I agree with you there. I agree with you there.
So
But she got revenge. Nobody stood in to take her.
Like she didn't have like the savior complex, but
Exactly.
it still was based around that thing that I don't feel like I necessarily want Tarantino diving into. Star Trek, however, is a different take we've never seen, and I've never seen a sci-fi handle to that kind of language. That's fair. I kind of want to see a BPU side Star Trek.
I feel like just his passion would shine a little bit more with Volume 3. It seems like it's something that's been ruminating in his brain for so long. He just opened up how he was talking about Uma Thurman about it recently. Yeah. And it's there's always been that sprinkle for that storyline that was set up in Volume 1 that I'm like, he says, come find me when you're older. Yeah. To Renita Green's daughter. I'm like, ooh, I do want to see that. That would be cool.
We'll see. I vote Kill Bill Volume 3, but I don't want cussing in the Federation of Planets. All right, Wolverine. Wool Space Vereen wants to know, what are your box office predictions for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood? Go.
300 domestic.
Overall? You mean opening weekend?
Opening weekend.
No, overall. Oh, sorry. No, overall 300 domestic, and I'd say another 250 foreign, bringing it around 550 to 600.
Okay.
Let's see. It's a 3-hour R-rated film.
That's why I went overall.
I would say, for guessing this opening weekend and with the star power it has, I would probably say like 80 million this weekend.
Okay, I saw it. I would say 60 to 70 seems fair.
Okay.
I think it's a time period that a lot of people don't necessarily want to revisit who are in their 20s and 30s. I wonder if they'll want to know what's happening with Manson and 69.
DiCaprio.
It is DiCaprio. It is Brad Pitt.
Margot
But
Robbie.
DiCaprio hasn't like blown up the box office with The Revenant or any of these films.
He was chasing
it's
Oscars. Not
Yeah,
money.
that's what I'm saying.
It's Tarantino's name too. I feel like there's a lot to look
It
forward
is.
to.
We'll
here.
see. We'll see as it comes along. But I think this is one of those films that's a little harder to get into, and I wonder if it'll get the box office that people think it'll be 80 to 100 million or something like that.
I don't think it'll be
We'll
that
see.
high.
Yeah.
Like I personally think 80. I agree with your 75 to 80, but I think overall 300. I think it'll have some good legs. I think a lot of like cinephiles will see it and word of mouth will keep it out. So I think 300 landing when it's done.
Yeah,
Okay.
we'll see, guys.
Yeah, we'll see. Let's wrap
Sorry,
up. One last
group
question.
text.
Real quick, no extra sentences. Luis Enrique de la Peña, if you could watch or make a Tarantino sequel to one of his films, which one would it be minus Kill Bill? All right, I'll go first. I take Reservoir Dogs 2. I want to see what happens to Tim Roth after this whole situation, how he's affected by it, and how he goes forward. What happens to Mr. Orange?
I want to find out what the mercenaries and Inglourious Bastards got up to when the war was over. I want to like see what a world post Hitler is for them. Like, what do they do with those skills?
How about a prequel where they all came together?
Ooh, either one of those.
Okay.
So Inglourious Bastards.
I would like to see Django Unchained.
Yeah,
I feel
a
like it'd be
sequel?
cool to see Django
Where they're
as
together?
a bounty hunter. Yeah.
Okay.
I think that'd be really
There's
cool.
a comic.
Yeah.
Django Unchained
yeah,
Bounty
and
Hunter. I
Zorro.
like that.
Yeah.
All right, well, there you go. That's our episode.
This is a great episode.
Yeah, it is actually. Collider Movie Talk. Thanks so much for joining us in our raucousness here on Collider. We really appreciate it every time. That's it, I think. Take care. Thanks to Adam Smith the Booth. Thanks to Dorian Parks for everything he was doing, and we'll talk to you soon. Take care.